Good evening. This post is regarding Title 20 Social Services Block Grant. The Social Security Act was first established on August 14, 1935, and has evolved greatly over time. In 1981, Title 20 was amended to establish the Social Services Block Grant, which gives state greater flexibility in funding allocation. Each state is allowed to determine which agencies receive the funding, what clients are eligible, and in what geographical areas those funds will be spent. They are also allowed to determine if the funds will be used at a state or local level, and if these funds will be used in government or private organizations or a combination. This program is a capped entitlement program, which means that Congress is obligated to provide these funds each year. These funds are provided to all 50 states and territories, including the Virgin Islands, District of Columbia, and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. The funds provided must be utilized to achieve one or more of the 5 following goals. 1. Achieving economic support and self-sufficiency to reduce dependency. 2. Achieving and maintaining self-sufficiency and the reduction of dependency. 3. Preventing child neglect, exploitation, also adult exploitation, and protecting those who are unable to protect themselves. 4. Preventing and reducing institutional care, providing more community-based options and home care solutions. And 5. Providing referrals to institutional services when home-based or community services are not an available or correct option for the client. Each year, states must hand in a document stating what the intended purposes of the grant for the following fiscal year will be, and at the end of each year, the states are also required to hand in an annual report detailing how those funds were used, which agencies they were allocated to, and what demographics the clients who utilized the funds had. For example, were they 60 plus? Were they children? The annual report must be detailed enough so that oversight can assure the funds were utilized in the exact manner that the initial report stated they would be. The grant does have some limitations. Inherent in the regulations for the grant are regulations providing no more than 10% of of funding can be moved over from the temporary assistance for needy families, and that the use of those funds were allocated towards vulnerable children and families who exist at a level of 200% below the poverty line. Also, the fund cannot be utilized to support any inherently religious programs. Any religious programs that do gain access to funding must demonstrate that the programs that they are administering to vulnerable populations do not have a religious component. This grant helps the nation's most vulnerable populations. These populations include children and families, the elderly, those who are experiencing situations of abuse. 11% of those that utilize the fund are the elderly over the age of 60. This fund helps states who would not elsewise have access to funds to strengthen community resources, and allows states to modify and change these programs on the fly without government limiting regulations that would ordinarily limit the ability of these agencies to change their policies. Critics of the Social Security Block Grant state that the flexibility that this grant provides limits congressional oversight of the project, but I would argue that the documentation that these agencies provide before and after each year allows significantly enough oversight for the program to be effective. The flexibility that the program provides also allows for political detachment, so that these funds are not being allocated to agencies based on political preference, Republican or Democrat, or religious preference, which often happens with state-funded agencies, or should I say, agencies that are religiously affiliated within states. In Tennessee, the Social Services Block Grant is used to build strong families by connecting Tennesseans to employment, education, and support services. And the finances the fund provides help over 16 different agencies statewide. The agencies that are funded by the Social Services Block Grant provide a plethora of services to vulnerable populations, including but not limited to adoption services, case management, meals, adult daycare, adult foster care, child foster care, home-delivered meals, housing services, transitional housing services, legal services, programs that are directed towards young parents, and parenting plans. Each state allocates these funds differently. Not all of them allocate them the way Tennessee does. However, all states have some sort of programming that is funded through the Social Services Block Grant that are directed towards vulnerable populations and include parenting programs, childcare programs, meals, resources, different items that greatly improve communities. One thing is certain, that without this grant, many states would not have the many programs and services that they currently have for their communities. Many of these states would not have the funding to support their most vulnerable people. Conclusion, the Social Services Block Grant provides flexible funding to all 50 states and territories. The funds provided to these states are used to assist the most vulnerable populations. The flexibility of this program allows for states to identify their most vulnerable and marginalized populations and allocate funds to agencies that without this block grant might not exist. It provides integral services such as home care options, community-based work, meals, legal services, a whole host of desperately needed programming to people who need it most. Without this block grant, there would be millions of people who could not access services they desperately need. Thank you very much and have a great night.